Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed the previous session. My name is Toby Hester. I'm a director of the European Sponsorship Association. I'm here today to talk to you about what sponsors want. ESSA's, as the European Sponsorship Association, we're about delivering greater value into the sponsorship industry. So what we're doing this morning, we've got 3 sessions that's going to help and hopefully add some value to what you can take away from the SoccerX conference. My background, well, I'm a failed footballer. As a kid I played at Portsmouth and Reading and was very bad, and at the age of 20 I was cleaning windows, which was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because at the same time I was working in a pub and I got recruited to go and work for the local Renault dealer. And I got put into the sales because I've got a big mouth, put into the sales team, and I started getting sales training. I then worked for Ford Motor Company, became quite successful, more sales training, before waking up one day and thinking, not getting paid enough for selling all these cars. And then went to work for a big marketing organisation called GTE, selling advertising, big American conglomerate, and my boss is here actually, and learned about selling. Learned the hard way. I used to get beaten around the head if I did it wrong, pat on the back if I did it right. And again, woke up one day, picked up the yellow pages, thought I want to get back into sport, walked the streets of London and got a job in sponsorship. I knew nothing about marketing. So I learnt about marketing. I took myself off to night school, did a diploma, knew what the 4 Ps were, understood what a guy called Kohler stood for, what he did, etc., etc. And then very luckily, I got a career in sponsorship that took me into places like Coca-Cola, 10 years at T-Mobile, and 8 years at Castrol, who I've just left. So the majority of that sponsorship work was in football. In fact, my first football foray in sponsorship was in 1998 with the European Championships, with the England sponsorship by Treeball. So that's my background. Hopefully that makes me relevant to you. If it doesn't, it's going to be a tough presentation. So, that's the wrong slide. Anybody know what these are? These are dustbin liners that represent the 5,000 sponsorship requests I used to get every year at T-Mobile. 5,000 unsolicited requests. This is Rebecca, lovely Rebecca, charismatic, gorgeous. I employed Rebecca, not just to look lovely and charismatic, but to actually answer all of these requests. If Rebecca had worked for me for the 17 years that I worked for Castrol and for T-Mobile, she'd have answered 80,000 sponsorship requests. How many of those requests do you think turned into revenue for the rights holder? 0. Not one of those 80,000 requests turned into a penny going to a rights holder. 40% of those 80,000 requests came from football organisations. This is called the brand funnel. And those of you that are traditional marketeers will understand this. This is the process that companies like Castrol, T-Mobile, Coca-Cola will look at when they're considering the journey they're going to take their customers on. They need to create an awareness of their brand. A brand like Coca-Cola, huge awareness, biggest awareness of any brand in the world. They need to create familiarity. That's a purpose, what it means to me. What it means to me as a consumer. You need to create a consideration. I'm thirsty. What shall I buy? I've got 15 fizzy drinks in front of me. I'm going to choose Coca-Cola because I'm familiar with them and I'm also very aware of them and they mean something to me. So I make my purchase. And you know what? If I like that taste and that fizz in the back of my throat, I'll become loyal and I'll buy it time and time again. In the way that brands are approaching sponsors, you're skipping a couple of steps. If you're Manchester United, I use Manchester United as an example. If you're Manchester United, we're all aware of you, but you're just writing to me saying, sponsor my shirt. What's the familiarity? Familiarity, there's very little familiarity. There's very little consideration of what it means to me, a brand, if I want to buy a sponsorship. So it's about relevance. Is there anybody from Southampton here? Football club. Great, that's good. It's my team actually, so I'm extremely loyal to them. Southampton Football Club, I've been a fan of since I was a kid. I actually sponsored them when I was at T-Mobile for a couple of years. We had a secondary deal with them. But I have four buddies, one who's the CEO of one of the biggest sports marketing organizations in the world. One is the MD of an FMCG. The other one is the CEO of a mobile marketing business. And I've spent $700 million in football activation and rights with Castrol over the last 8 years. Southampton don't know that. They have got in their hands people that have been spending billions of dollars on football rights, and they've not engaged with their fans, me. They have never come to me and said, why don't you come and sponsor us? Why don't you come to dinner? Why don't you come and meet the commercial team? So this is one of the fundamental issues with football is you don't really know who your audiences are, especially your commercial audiences. I actually think that sponsorship needs to learn to sell a slightly different way. And it's not just football sponsorship that needs to sell a different way. Football has changed hugely, probably more than any other sector in sponsorship over the last 20, 30 years. Back in the day, you used to sell a shirt deal, you used to sell a perimeter board, you used to sell a website, program ad, etc., etc. Huge revenues now come in from television. You've got huge revenues coming in from merchandise. And sponsorship is probably the second or third thing on your agenda in terms of opportunity. Don't get me wrong, there's still opportunities for you to go and sell your perimeter boards and your other small revenue opportunities to local sponsors. But sponsorship has become far more sophisticated over the years. Football is still selling the inventory that they've always had to the tariff that they decide to put to it at the beginning of the year. I would suggest that football clubs, not unreasonably, and football organisations sit down probably in about January and say, what are we going to sell our rights for at the end next season? What are we going to sell our shirt for? We need to have a revenue of X million dollars, pounds, euros, whatever it might be. And then you divide it up. And then you go out, you send all your information out to all the sponsors and say, do you want to buy our shirt for $1 million? Let me tell you, if you're selling a football shirt sponsorship to Coca-Cola, it might be worth, and you're reaching billions of people in Asia, Africa, South America, North America, Europe, it could be worth a lot more than $1 million. If you're selling it to the local car dealership, it's not worth $1 million because he's never going to get $1 million worth of revenue back from you. So why are you setting your tariffs at a point and as a benchmark that you're going to go out and sell to sponsors? Why are you telling sponsors when you write to us how much your rights are worth? You're not considering the needs of the sponsors. So quick question. Can everybody who's had an education and has a degree, a college qualification, or some kind of business qualification put their hand up? Got some smart people here. Can you put your hand up if you've got a degree, diploma, college diploma, or any kind of professional qualification in sales and marketing? Thank you. A lot less. Can you put your hand up if you've got a qualification in sales? Clever guys. 2. How many of you sell sponsorship in the room? So you people need to learn to sell. You people need to learn how to market. Because if you don't know how to sell, you're missing a trick. And if you're missing a trick, you're not going to be able to deliver this. If you don't understand marketing, you don't understand the journey that brands go through to make a decision on which sponsorship to choose, which journey they're going to take their customers on. If you don't understand sponsorship, you don't understand the friction that's required between the two brands to create the value exchange that the customer gets to believe that Coca-Cola is the right thing to buy because it's sponsoring the FIFA World Cup. So I'd like you to think about solutions. Don't think about selling your rights for $1 million or for £100,000 or for $10 million. Don't think about that. Think about what sponsorship is. Think about the value that you can bring to a sponsor through delivering an audience and having that brand friction. If you're not a brand, you're not going to create the friction. You're faceless. And unfortunately, and I know this firsthand, there are not many brands in football. There are logos. There are 11 players that go out. There's a guy called Mourinho. There's a guy called Ferguson. There's a guy called Ranieri. But there's a guy called Messi. But there's no brand in football that is being sold as a brand at the moment. Not in the way that a corporate business, blue chip business, would actually consider. Red Bull. Red Bull is a brand. It tells a story. Football clubs, football organisations could be a brand that tells a story. They don't tell stories. Red Bull take talented people with goals, with ambition. They support them. They give them a stage, and they realise their dreams. They own that story. They then tell that story to their customers. What's the story you tell to your customers? As a football club, as a league, as a community programme, what's the story that you tell? La Liga yesterday, in the first 5 minutes of the La Liga presentation, I see you guys are there, the first 5 minutes of the presentation, I wrote down, yeah, but what's the story? And I was like ready to ask the question. They answered the question. They have a story. They're becoming a brand. The Premier League has a story. Not particularly well spoken, but they have a story. The heritage of football in the UK, the development of football, the great players that they have. They have a bit of a story. They don't play it very well. And that's where La Liga can actually overtake the Premier League. I recently did a bit of market research, and for those guys that I did the market research on, I apologise. I went and saw 5 football clubs and football organisations. Each of them presented $10 million plus properties to me. They were quite interesting. They're pretty creative. All of them had researched my brand. They'd put the logo on the kit or the branding, the advertising, the bus, whatever they wanted to sell to me. And some of them had actually made an assumption of what my objectives are. That's not difficult. You know, sponsorship's about increasing awareness, and it's about selling stuff. That's what sponsorship needs to deliver. The critical thing that these 5 football organisations didn't do, in their fantastic presentations, in their wonderful offices, they didn't give me any data. They didn't give me any insight. They didn't actually prove to me that if I sponsored that football organisation, what it would do for my business. This comes back to what I was saying. If you're not a salesman, if you're not a marketeer, and you don't understand the needs of a sponsor, how the hell are you going to sell $10 million, $50 million worth of FIFA or UEFA assets? You're not, are you? Or you're going to hope that the CEO or the MD is a football fan. When I was at Castrol, we used to have a CEO who was a huge Sunderland fan. And he was very, very vigilant in the way that he practiced and didn't push us into sponsoring football. But when we said we want to sponsor the World Cup in UEFA, he said, yeah, great idea. And you've got to hope you get that. So you pull on the emotions of those people. But data and insights are the things that you need to deliver. Can we just take these away so people can see what I'm talking about? Sorry. This is my lunch for later. See, it's not really paperwork. Thank you, guys. And data is as relevant to when you're selling an international sponsorship or whether you're selling a local sponsorship. If you're selling a local sponsorship to, let's say, a regional car firm, they still want to know the number of people that are driving Fords, if they're a Ford dealership. They still want to know the age group, the purchasers. They still want to know how many women to men. They want to know the basic detail. They want to know that. If you're FIFA and you're going to present to Coca-Cola or to Castrol, we want to know who you're reaching in each territory, what the buying trends are. In Castrol, we used to call it the car park. How many cars are being driven in Asia? How many motorbikes are being driven in Asia? What's the opportunity? Who are the partners that you've got and what are their opportunity? Continental, big partner of FIFA. You know, we tried to work with those guys and it was a great opportunity for us. So data is a very, very important piece of element of your sales pitch. And don't send it to us in one of those things. Don't just send us a big file and say, come and sponsor Barcelona or La Liga and say, this is the people that we're going to reach. And here's a file, download that and read that and learn all about us. Don't do that. The other big thing that's changed in sponsorship is the decision-making purposes. I hope this bores you, because this is why I've actually left corporate life. So the internal process back in the day was you'd walk into the MD or the CMO's office and you say, right, I want to do a deal with Manchester United. I want to sell them 20 cars. And they'd say, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Now, you go through a whole process. You've got to define the business goal. I don't define that. The business comes to me and it says, this is the business goal. The sales and marketing direct teams actually then work out what the strategy is. The marketing guys come to us and say, here's your marketing strategy, here's what you need to achieve, come up with a sponsorship strategy, typically 2 to 5 years. We then look at who's the audience that we need to change behavior in to actually shift the impact on our brand. What are the tools we need? Just widely, do we have them? Then we get to the internal sponsorship process. And the internal sponsorships process is, let's create a criteria. By the way, we've not even looked at any of those sponsorship requests. We've not even thought about sponsoring football, cricket, rugby, the Olympics or World Cup or anything at this stage. We then research opportunities. Broadly, what's right for us? Football, rugby, whatever. We select a property or a genre. We go to an agency. And this is critical. Very seldom does a brand director, head of sponsorship, CMO pick up the phone to anybody at a football organisation or sponsorship organisation and say, we'd like to sponsor you. Because we want to remain innocuous. We want to remain behind the curtain while somebody goes in, finds out what rights you have. So that's why we employ agencies. We do our due diligence. We assess the opportunities that come back. We look at them and say, actually, you know what? Sponsoring Manchester United, Barcelona, not a bad idea. We might have 2 or 3 on the table. We do the due diligence. Who are the ones with the skeletons in the cupboard? We then create our rights requirements. So we nail down into what are we going to do to actually achieve our objectives? Do we need perimeter? Do we need digital? Do we need shirt? And then we will approach the rights holder. We'll be introduced to the rights holder. And we'll get into the sales process. Sometimes we'll take a sales expert in with us. We do a fit analysis. What is the brand fit? What is the audience fit? And what is the relationship fit? If we don't like you as an individual or a group of individuals at day 1, we're probably not going to like you after day 360. So if that doesn't work, if there isn't a relationship there, it's not going to work. We then go back in turn and we ask for the board's authority to negotiate. Or to close, sorry, I missed the negotiation piece earlier. We create a negotiation strategy. We'll bring a negotiation organisation in if it's a lot of money. You know, with FIFA or with, you know, a $10 million deal, the difference between bringing in a negotiation organisation is probably 20–30% on the bottom line. If I can save $2 to $5 million by bringing expert negotiators in and actually still retain a relationship because we've got into some really tough discussions, that's done it for me. And I would pay money for that. And there are negotiation organisations that do that. Also, my board would feel extremely happy if I've got a professional negotiator come in. I've got sales training. I'm not a very good negotiator. I blink first. So you've got your negotiation strategy, you go in, you negotiate, you close the deal. That's it. That could take anything from 6 weeks to 6 months, that whole process. So when you're sending me that sponsorship request, one of those 80,000 sponsorship requests consider that. I think there's a number of ways to selling. There's 3 approaches. This is the approach that many rights holders have got at the moment. You go direct to the brand. 80,000 requests, signed up none. Why do you want to go direct to the brand? Why do you want to put that proposal to sponsor my kit for $1 million? What brands do, we actually go direct. Actually, we go via our agencies to the rights holder. That's great, but that doesn't solve the problem for you, because that puts all the control in the sponsor's court. What you need to do is you need to create a relationship. Don't create a relationship by trying to send pieces of paper with figures on it, saying this is the best deal, I can help you. And also don't phone me up and say, can I come and see you to talk to you about your sponsorship strategy and your objectives? I wouldn't come to you as a football club and say, tell me what your player acquisition program plan is for next year. I wouldn't come to you and say how much money you got in your bank. You're never going to get that information. You're only actually going to get a bit of that information if we sign a deal with you. So create a relationship, and this is really, really fundamental, because the relationships that you create can be long-lasting. I've got a buddy. He's in the room. He has done deals with the same guy when he was a commercial director at Orange, at Motorola, and now Microsoft. And he's done 3 deals, multi-million-pound deals. Actually, he's done numerous deals with the same guy because he's got a great relationship with him. He goes out and plays golf with him. Create a relationship that's long-lasting. You may not sign them up. A lot of you will move around. You know, if you're the commercial director of a football club today, or if you're an agency salesperson today, you're going to be moving on in 4 or 5 years. Take your little black book with you. The same guy has got a black book of 100 names. 100 names that he can phone up because he's created, he's networked with, he's PR'd himself to these people. He's got a little black book of 100 names of brands that he can pick up the phone and speak to. He's got 20 names that he sells to every 3 years. $100,000 deals every 3 years. That's $2 million straight away, because he's really good mates with 20 people that buy his services. And you do that through PR. You do that by creating awareness. I'm just going to flick back to that slide. You do it by creating awareness. You do it by creating a story about yourself, about your brand that makes me interested. You do it by sending me a newsletter. Sponsorship agencies are really good at sending newsletters, telling me what's going on, telling me Rugby World Cup's going on, that Samsung have got this great ad campaign, blah, 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 blah. I think that sponsorship agency is quite cool. And I might get 20 or 30 of those newsletters. It's my job to read those. If La Liga sent me a newsletter every quarter saying this is what's happening, this is the brand story that we're telling to you, these are the success points, I'm interested. You know what? Because I'm a football man. I'm a sponsorship man. I want to know what's working, what isn't working. I want to know what digital activations are working. I want to know what's new in mobile apps and how people are exploiting that stuff. We're never going to get bored of that stuff. We will read that stuff. We'll read that stuff instead of watching Coronation Street or Match of the Day, because that's what we're interested in. So create a relationship. Be creative. I've lost my place now. That's blowing me, isn't it? So, I want to wrap up. It's getting dark outside. There are 5 points that I want you to walk away with from Essa and from Toby Hester today. And that is, develop your sales and marketing skills. Don't be afraid of saying, I need educating. When you work brand side, do you know what? You get a budget. I used to have something like a 200 grand budget a year for my team to go and put them onto marketing courses, digital courses. Do that. Invest in yourself. I invested in myself. Create long-term relationships. Become people's friends. Offer solutions, not opportunities. Don't go and offer an amount of money. Don't go and offer the number of people. Offer a solution. Those 5 football clubs I went to, 1 or 2 of them offered me some solutions. Know your fans. Know who they are, where they are, what they do. Be able to push a button on your laptop and have that data ready. That takes investment. Be able to tell that story to the insight and data story to the people you want to pitch to. And be a brand. Stand for something. Just don't be another football organisation with a logo and a bunch of people that sing your song on the terraces every week. Absolutely stand for something. When Barcelona put UNICEF on their shirt, they stood for something. When the Ajax team walked out last Mother's Day with their mothers, they stood for something. They had values that they wanted to demonstrate. Have values in your business, whether you're an agency, whether you're a consultant, or whether you're a football organisation. Stand for something, because people buy values, they buy stories. And that's it. So, as I said, I'm a director of the European Sponsorship Association. We are developing some workshops. One of the workshop series that we're developing is how to sell sponsorship. So if you're interested in that, I put my personal email on there at the moment because I've just left Castro, I'm on gardening leave, and we're just about to jump into this big workshop program. Please take my personal email. If you want more information, if you want to be my friend, because I might buy sponsorship in the future, I'm happy for you to do that, but don't send me all this crap that I've been receiving. And poor Rebecca, she's now a legal consultant. She's out of marketing. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. We've got a Q&A session coming up in a minute. I would like to invite Andy Westlake to the stage. Hopefully he's not asleep in there. Andy Westlake's there. Andy Westlake's co-director of mine, of the European Sponsorship Association.